So again, welcome everyone to our TCI Talk, the last one of the year. And I'm going to let Doris and Melissa introduce themselves after, but we really appreciate that you're here with us for our discussion on the ABCs of driving results with that Doris and Melissa are going to have with us. And again, I'll be recording this so we can have others review this, or we can review this and others can preview. I'll turn it over first to Doris Neyra, and if you'll introduce yourself, and then Melissa Van Putten-Henderson. We're really grateful for you to be all being here today, and you're on.
Thank you, Lori. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited. I'm the last one on the docket, but happy to close out the year, hopefully strong here for all of you. And I know this is a little bit of a smaller group, so hopefully that will give us an opportunity to have more of a dialogue. Again, that's supposed to be a conversation, and so feel free to interrupt and connect with us anytime and ask any questions you might have. So again, my name is Doris Neyra. I've been with Wells Fargo / Wachovia combined companies for almost 15 years now. I'm a managing director and wealth advisor by job description, which basically means I've worked with a lot of complex families to help them achieve their financial goals through their life and transitions that they might experience throughout it. And I've also been on the advisory board of TCI for the last 6 years, almost 7 now, I think it is, and government chair. Now it's not governance anymore. We call it now, what is it now, Lori? Nominating committee, that's it. Right now. So it's been a great experience for me on that end to see TCI grow. And Sherry, I'm glad you had a good experience with Strategies for Success. That's an amazing program. Very proud that we have that available. And from there, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Melissa. Melissa and I have been working together at Wells Fargo for the last 8 years, and I've had a really strong partnership. So I'm glad she's volunteered to do this with me today. Melissa.
And you're just hearing my dog, who always seems to want to make an appearance as soon as I start talking. So hold on a second, let me close this door.
Welcome, Melissa and Hank.
Yes.
It always happens, either it's the dog or the lawnmower, the gardeners show up just when you're ready to speak.
Just when you're ready to speak. He was quiet the entire time, but I will say COVID has made me more real when it comes to that, right? I think people appreciate the personal aspect of how we all have been interacting lately. So my name is Melissa Van Putten-Henderson. I'm an investment strategist and managing director at Wells Fargo. I've been here now about 8 years. I am so happy to be part of TCI today. Doris asked me to come on and have a conversation with you ladies. I've participated before. It's such a wonderful group, and it's a pleasure for us to have this conversation with everyone today. As Doris mentioned, we want to make sure this is conversational though. So with that, we want to just get right in.
Let's get to it. So our topic today is the ABCs of driving results. And I kind of use the ABC because it's always peak closing. So I thought that would be a good way to do it. And so when Melissa and I, work with clients, and I guess you can use the format really on any business, right? There are some key elements to being able to do that. And so what we identified is really being able to have an ideal client criteria. How do you source the business? What is your client contact strategy? How do you really consistently execute and be organized around that process? And then very important, especially I think in this year, is, you're making sure that you take care of your personal growth and well-being, because we're only as good if we're not feeling well, then we're not gonna really do well from a professional basis either. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Melissa to kind of get us started on the ideal client criteria, and we'll just kind of talk with each other. And again, like I said, please feel free to jump in, interrupt, and ask any questions you might have.
Wonderful. So first question for you, Doris, is what is your right client profile?
So I think it's important that you identify the audience you're going to be catering to, right? I'm going to try to keep this as broad as possible because I don't want to just tie this into the financial service industry. But so I spend quite a bit of time trying to see what are the services I'm offering and which target audience does that really cater to? And then furthermore, once I identify sort of my target audience, how do I reach out to them? How do I connect with them? And then I think it's also, you have to be, authentic with whatever you do. So I think it's important to try and find a connection with that particular audience and that the client you're trying to ultimately cater to.
How disciplined are you with that process?
Yeah, sometimes that can be tricky because most people are, I'm definitely always eager to grow or to grow my business, right? So sometimes you tend to walk off the line and you feel like you should compromise because it might be a good thing. But I think over the last 20 years that I've been doing this, I think I realized that in the end, it's important to stick with that ideal client criteria. Even, it might not give you all the immediate results that you're hoping for because you're not taking everything on and everyone in. But in the long run, it will create a better business and you'll be able to, properly cater to that audience. So on that note, Melissa, since you and I have been working together for the last 80 years, I thought it would be kind of fun to share, the opposite. So, again, to keep it broad, everybody might have a different set of audience for TCI. Obviously, it's women executives and business owners. What if you think about your career and whatnot? What about like a nightmare type of a client or prospect?
I think we all have those experiences when we meet someone where alarm bells are going off, right? But one of the first signs for me is too controlling, and even just the conversation. If we're having a conversation and that person is trying to control the conversation, they know everything, not giving you a chance to speak. And I'm constantly asking myself, why am I here? Usually those are the signs for me that this is going to be a nightmare. I should probably walk away.
So now you realize that sometimes that happens and you have that type of client. So why do you keep those clients around and who no longer fit, the definition of what would be an ideal client?
Great question, because it ties back into just how disciplined we are, right? And for me, I call it a 3-ingredient recipe. It's why do I keep them? Typically, it's a mixture of peer pressure. It's a mixture of I can do it, I can fix this attitude. And I would add a sprinkle of people pleasing, right? We typically work in a team atmosphere. And usually I want to make sure everybody's happy. So I tend to keep those clients much longer than I should, but it never ends well. When I think about all those clients and prospects that we took on where I had that gut feeling of this isn't going to work, but I tried to make it work anyway, it ended up frustrating not just me, but the entire team. And then frankly, the experience that you were hoping to have for the client and yourself, no one's happy. So I've kept them on a little too long, but it's a reminder of go with your gut and be honest with your teammates about that.
Because I think ultimately what happens when you work with someone like that, it takes away your focus from energy. The other people that actually appreciate what you do or that actually benefit from the things you do for them. And I'm sure all of you on the call here have had that experience probably, and it's more of a distraction. But it's hard for me, sometimes it's hard to let go too, because like you said, you feel like I can do this, I'm going to make this work. And, you always want to try and prove yourself, but sometimes it's better to just recognize it's just not a good fit. And it's better to step away and therefore create a better environment for everyone else involved than trying to force the issue.
I can't help but think as we start the new year, and a lot of people do a lot of house cleaning at this time, What would that look like? Is there a process to get rid of that awful client? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, so I think it's, and at least in our business, we do constantly, relationship reviews and try to see how we can, either, improve someone's experience or whatnot. And when we realize it's just not a good fit, so for our organization, it's maybe a little easier in the sense of we have so many different lines of businesses, right? So maybe if it's not the perfect or ideal fit for our line of business, then I would just make an introduction, to a counterpart in another line of business where it might be a better fit. Or, we have different personalities and people, on our team. So again, if there's someone maybe who would connect better with that person or create a better environment, then that's fine too. So it's an art form to properly manage someone out, So I think you always want to be sure that you don't, I think, burn any bridges or ever leave like a bad taste there. So it's all about making them understand that it's in their own best interest to make a change. At least that's sort of what I do.
I'll add to that. One of my favorite exit strategies I've used was a very, very controlling client from the get-go. I didn't want to work with them, but I felt pressured from the team to work with them. And the entire first 3 months I was working with them, I kept saying very frankly to them, I just don't think this is going to work. But because that personality was so strong and controlling, not only was it, he wanted to prove me wrong of, no, we can work together. And what transpired from that lesson was, again, being authentic. I was just very honest from the get-go to tell him this just isn't a good fit. And it ended up being a relationship now where we're at peace. So I've been able to send business away that doesn't fit, and I've been able to allow him to work within my framework so that I can give my best to him as well as other clients. So I keep coming back to, we really have to be honest with yourself, even though it's hard and sometimes you don't want to turn the business away. It just ends up costing you too much mentally, frankly.
It depletes your energy.
It really, really does.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about it. It really does.
If everybody around you knows that person's name, it's a problem.
Well said. Well said.
It's a problem.
That's funny.
So let's shift gears to sourcing new business, how we go about doing that. So Doris, how do you block time on your calendar each week for new business development? And before you answer that, how well do you honor and protect that time?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a key element. Time management, time blocking is a big part of me being able to stay organized and to continue to basically have a pipeline for new business. So my calendar is like color coded and has all the different activities on it, right? So I have at least 2 times a week where I block at least an hour or 2 hours of prospect research, because you got to be able, again, finding that ideal client, identifying the people you want to connect with at the end of the day. And then I do the same thing, and I block it out in green, for prospecting, meaning I'm going to make these outbound phone calls to the different people I'd like to connect with and see that I can begin that dialogue. And then, of course, this all works in different ways. So from, the phone contact to the email follow-up to the occasional mailing or email with a white paper or something interesting that they can read about. It's all continuous sort of drip on the prospect to create that connection. And then part of the research aspect is important too, because if you find, whether it's through LinkedIn or some other means, that there's connectivity with someone else that you might know or you might know, and they can make an introduction, that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, it's extremely, so my calendar is blocked out, and my associate and the rest of the team knows, if it's blocked, it's blocked. I mean, unless there's some major emergency going on, then, I'll compromise. But I have to say, I've been pretty good about keeping that in place.
Do you use is it through the Outlook calendar or some other technology, some other app?
No, it's good old Outlook, I have to say, and like I said, I just color code and block out the time and I'll just have it repetitively going on. And, I set that up, really years ago. So now it's going forward on my calendar, forever basically. So that helps. The other thing I do too, to help me stay focused, for example, like I use Mondays, I block that whole day actually out and I use it as a maintenance day, what I call it. So I do have the underlying, research and outbound phone calls, but then I keep that day open anyway so that I can deal with just other administrative things and get that cleared up. And so I'm ready for the rest of the week to just kind of be in meetings and be on calls and all that.
Once you identify those prospects and research and everything, do you have a specific contact plan that you follow?
Yeah, so we use a system that's called Client Link, but there's I'm sure different ways out there where you can set up the tasks basically. And so with clients, which is important to cultivate your own client base too, there's usually growth opportunity there, but there is the monthly outreach for sure. And depending on how I progress with that prospect, I have to space it out more or less, right? So if there is something immediately that we can connect and talk about, and there might be something I can work with them on, then it would be more frequent contact, and I just keep setting up the reminders and the tools that I prepare for what sort of articles or things I want to send out. If it's someone who I've either been able to connect with, but the timing isn't right, I'll just keep setting reminders, 3 months, 6 months out, depending on what the appropriate time frame is. And then, I really kind of take it from there, but the order is usually phone call, follow-up email, something to send afterwards, and essentially having a face-to-face meeting, which nowadays, of course, would be a virtual meeting versus an actual face-to-face most of the time. So that's changed the dynamic too. So this, with COVID and everything else, we all had to make adjustments, right, on how we approach business, and especially business development. It's different when you work with existing clients. They kind of know you and you can make the phone calls and the occasional Zoom call. But I think when it comes to prospecting, you have to get almost a little bit more creative. But I will say also, maybe one of the benefits is that before, I think it's harder for people to commit and say, oh man, I'm going to meet with this lady and spend an hour of my time. I don't know. Now you can set up the Zoom call and the obligation isn't as bad, right? It's a meeting, you can even make it 30 minutes for starters, but they do still get to see you and kind of get to feel you out without any further commitment, right? Or without really a major time or place commitment. So I would take advantage of that. And there's a lot of different books out now too, how you can do the virtual prospecting better, whether it's the setup of your lighting, the way you interact with people over Zoom, et cetera. So it's that's out there now. And I would probably encourage all of you to kind of take a look into that. I have a book, and Lori, I can send you the link for the book so you can follow up with everyone that kind of talks about that and how to kind of generate or prospect in the virtual environment.
And if you want to put that in the chat too, but that sounds great. I mean, and Doris, I feel like you're doing, well, whatever you're doing, I feel like we are sitting in a room and you are looking, like we're having eye contact with how you're set up. I really feel like that.
Well, that's actually a good point, Lori. That is actually the hardest part of doing virtual meetings. So it's even weird for me still now that I'm sitting here and I'm forcing myself to really look into that camera. So I can't really see what you guys are doing. but and normally when you have a face-to-face, I look into your eyes, right? So I can see and read your facial expressions. But in order for me to connect that connectivity with you and with all of you, you have to force yourself to kind of look through, and hopefully it's working. But it is odd because I'm just staring at the camera, but you hopefully are looking at me. So that will make it all feel a little bit better. But that's one of the aspects that will be addressed in that book, and it's kind of an important component. Because like if I look at Jessica now, right, I'm looking down. I'm not really giving you that same feeling, right? Than as if I look at you.
Yeah, and I actually felt like Lori. I felt like you were looking at me this whole time.
I'm looking at all of you.
She's watching us.
That's an important component of it all. Yeah. So then I guess maybe we can shift a little bit to the existing client contact strategy, very important too, right? In these days, there's also defense necessary, right? To make sure we keep our clients happy and make sure that they're getting a good experience as far as what our offering is. And so I thought I'll talk to Melissa about that a little bit, and how are you currently contacting all of your clients? How are you making sure you're staying in touch and they're feeling still that they're well taken care of?
Old school Outlook spreadsheet. I'm very much into, I did not know Doris color coded her calendar. I am a big proponent of that as well. I do green, reds, purple, and they all mean different things. And it's really, I'm a big proponent of just reaching out to people to let them know, hey, I'm here. How are you doing? Because I do believe when people don't hear from you, sometimes they misinterpret that to you're not taking care of them. So one of my coaches said to me, I have high performance syndrome because the truth is I never feel like I'm doing enough. And I only feel that I'm doing enough if I'm reaching out to those clients and talking to them. And so I typically will just have goals for the day, trying to balance, of course, anything that's already on the calendar. I try to have goals per day to say, okay, I'm going to reach out to at least 5 clients today and start out my week saying, who am I going to talk to? And I write their names down. And by the end of the week, I just make sure that I have touched base with all those clients and have some good conversation with them.
Lisa, how do you really create sort of value with that, right? Because it's one thing to just pick up the phone and, how's it going, whatever, it's probably, that's, probably not so ideal. Have you thought about what do you talk to clients about? And I know your role is more specific on the investment front, but like, how do you feel you really create that values when you speak to clients and they hang up the phone afterwards, they really feel that was a time well spent?
So because I am specifically in investment, so my role is kind of commoditized, where a lot of people feel like, okay, you buy bonds, stocks, alternative investments. It's been important to me when I reach out to clients to have a conversation outside of investments. And I think that allows my relationship to go deeper with them. Before we go to even start talking about the market, I'm asking, how's the family? What's going on in your life? And so that next time I'm talking to them, of course, we do talk about the markets and things that are going on and what I've done in the portfolio, as I think that is also important to make sure they know, listen, I'm on top of this, but that's taken care of. I want to know how you as a person are doing. And I think over the years, that's made the difference between myself and some counterparts that will just, as soon as they call, just go right into, oh, did you see the markets today? I try to make it not about investments all the time, so they know that I care about them as a person, not just as their portfolio.
Great.
Okay.
So I think clients do appreciate that, and we've sent out different things to our clients too that will help them either connect with family, totally different things than just, the usual financial service industry type of stuff, right? And we've done, wine tastings instead of market outlooks, just trying to keep people in a positive, happy spirit because, it's some people handle it well, others really don't like to be stuck at home. So I think that's
going to ask you about that. What do? You just mentioned one potential gift or other thing, wine tasting. I hear, and gifts are more difficult. Well, you guys have home addresses, but for some of us, if we only have business addresses, what do you do about that? Or what are some of the more unique gifts that you would send to clients?
So we work with a lot of families, Lori. So what ends up happening, like if we know they have children or something, we've actually sent out different games or books, that they can do family activities together on that end. A lot on the culinary front, like this year, normally we sort of send out elaborate baskets or whatever for the holidays. But this year I was like, this needs to be more personal. It can't be such a corporate gift. And I ended up sending, most our clients actually apple crumb pies from Traverse City, from the Traverse City Pie Company, because I spent my summer up there and did a lot of sampling. So anyways, I thought, that was something that I experienced over the summer and was a part of my journey this year. So I thought it would be nice for them to see that at home, really nicely baked, pie that they can share with their family over the holidays. And so far, I guess it was a big hit. So I don't think it's always about the price tag on it. Sometimes it's more the thought. And of course, I wrote a much more personalized note also to the clients versus the usual happy holidays from Wells Fargo. So I think that was one of the things we did. And then we're actually trying to work on, some women specific events, one of which is like a fashion show we're going to try and work out for the first quarter. And we did a museum tour, for example, of NSU, where we did a private tour of the art exhibit Happy. And we had the executive director there kind of give the tour. And at first I was kind of questioning that because I wasn't sure how that's going to work, to really on your computer screen or whatever, see an art exhibit. But they did a really great job, and they had, the cameras and gave you the tour, and we spoke about the different pieces. And then also I thought that it was a great exhibition, happy in these times. And actually the exhibit wasn't really about being happy. It was actually the opposite. Like some of the pieces were kind of depressing and had some darker underlying tones to it. So just being able to kind of discuss that and have everybody involved that kind of worked out really well. Like I said, I have not hosted one thing this year that was investment related. So it was all different things, culture, arts type of stuff. And we're looking even into performing arts. Actually, we're going to do something with Broadway, where we're going to have maybe some of the actors involved, and have like an actors round table where our clients can talk to them directly, so that could be nice. So yeah, just trying to get a little more creative and making the best of the most out of our new norm. So yeah.
Great. Shifting gears a little bit in organization and consistent execution, Doris, how do you trust? I know we have a big team around us to be able to execute on what we do. So how do you trust and support others in doing their jobs?
Yeah, so I think some of that takes time and trusting each other, right? Trust is earned, and I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and think that, we're all obviously competent professionals. And so I try not to micromanage. However, if something then doesn't exactly go as planned, which hopefully doesn't happen very often because we do a lot of pre-call planning, post-call planning, then that gives me a one-on-one opportunity to work with that particular team member to make sure that we always do the best we can and they always look our best. So, so that's that. But I think a lot of it is in the prep work, right? You have to think of especially prospect meetings, as it's kind of like you have to do a dress rehearsal, right? You have to think about what are the different objections that could come up, what are the different questions that could possibly come up, knowing as much as you know about that prospect, and going in as prepared as you can at the end of the day. And also very important, I think, when you work in a team-based environment, that everybody has their piece in the meeting and have a responsibility to deliver that on their end. And then of course there always has to be one person that leads the meeting, make sure that things go accordingly and that nobody goes off script necessarily, and then that there's a closing component to it, because it's nice when we all meet together and talk about a lot of things, but if there's not a wrap up and sort of an action list or next steps afterwards, then unfortunately it was probably a waste of time too. So it's very important to follow all the steps through on that end to be productive.
I have a question. So do you feel that you've had to switch how you work with your team too during COVID, with the more check-ins and also trying to add in some fun and humorous elements into the work and not making it so strictly business when you do meet with your team? to keep them
That's
encouraged?
actually a great question.
Mm.
And so because I've been there for 15 years and worked with most people, believe it or not, probably 8 to 10 years, we sort of have a really good routine. And I will say in our industry, we've been super busy, right? So as a matter of fact, it has been very challenging to kind of keep that fun sort of interacting component. I mean, we're on a lot of calls and meetings really pretty much nonstop. I do try though, what I will say when we had some of these virtual events, you know, for example, I would have my colleagues over, or one of them maybe, and, you know, behave and be social distance if we can. And then have a little bit of that face-to-face interaction also, and have the check-in. And then, yes, separately, I would try at least, because we really couldn't see each other that much, right? And we don't internally do Zoom calls because it's just, the system would be too overloaded. So when we internally work with each other, it's mostly conference calls, right? So I do try to, you know, occasionally start off with kind of checking in too, you know, making sure everybody's doing okay. And then also the occasional one-on-one, because again, if we have a call with, you know, 5 other people on it, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, you know, and if they have something going on, or good or bad, right? So that takes a little more extra work. But I will say, I've definitely been a lot more efficient, you know, working from home, because you don't have any of those interruptions. You know, the way our office is set up, we all have, you know, sort of glass offices, so you can see everyone, but they do have doors. You know, and there's the occasional, you know, person that, you know, likes to come by and kind of chat you up, and then sometimes they just won't leave. You know? So that I don't have now. But at the same token, I don't have the opportunity to kind of run by someone's office quick and be like, hey, let me ask you this quick, or hey, you know, how are you doing? Or here's what I've been doing. So that is definitely a little more challenge. I will say I'm just lucky in the sense that we've all been working together for a really long time, that I think there's a certain comfort level there. And I will probably be able to pick up if there's a problem, or if somebody's not having a good time or struggling with something. And so I try to keep in mind how everybody individually is dealing with this scenario, and then pay more or less attention, or, you know, to that in that sense. But that's definitely a challenge. And I wish there was like a better way to, you know, I was actually thinking the other day that maybe we should do like a sort of a work happy hour. You know, it would have to be still Zoom again, but for everyone to be able to let their hair down and just kind of interact without talking business. But yeah. Sorry,
Sherry, what I've done with that is on the team that I work with, I sometimes when we're doing conference calls, like Doris pointed out, it's hard to, you don't want to call somebody out, but sometimes I hear something, somebody said something that didn't sound like themselves. What I try to do is then make it my mission to, let me just check in with them, give them a call and let them just talk. And I have found, even as, you know, we started this meeting and my dog started barking in the background, before I used to be so embarrassed about all of that. And I find that my relationships, because we're all at home and we're all now just real in our environments, having those personalized conversations, I think has gotten me to have a better relationship with some of my partners, where I just let them talk. And Doris has done the same thing, where things have happened where she'll just reach out or send a quick text. Hey, how are you doing? Let's talk. Even if it means we're talking after hours, because we all recognize we're busy, but some partners need more than others. And we try to be respectful of, while Doris and I are fine kind of on our own and we're like, woohoo, this is great, we can get so much done. There are a lot of people struggling at home, and it's not as easy and or fun for them. So the same thing with clients. You know, some people are totally fine with the Zoom calls and or just conference calls. Others, you know, my calls take much longer with them. So I just try to meet people where they are. And we'll touch on how we balance all of that later on. But I really try to have the bandwidth to listen to what somebody else needs, so we can get the best out of them too, as well. So Doris, as we're talking about trusting and supporting your team, how do you enthusiastically every time credentialize your partners and remain sincere in that as well.
Yeah, so I think that's super important nowadays when you have meetings or in general. You know, if you're working in a team environment, you want to make sure that you present your partners really the best of your abilities and to their background, and making sure that they are proper credentialized to make the person who you're talking to ultimately really feel special and know that you have a tremendous amount of professionals surrounding you as a resource. And I will say, you know, over time, when you work with someone for a long time, you sort of start cutting out a few pieces here and there. And I just had to recently remind myself, it's actually super important that when people meet with you, that they really understand who are the people in the room and what is each person going to do for me, right? I think that's how clients and prospects look at that. So it's important to make sure that they understand who's sitting across the table or across the camera from them. And so oftentimes I'll also go back to the partners and ask them, you know, what is it that you really would like me to share with, you know, clients and prospects? And then I typically always give everyone an opportunity to round out or add on to whatever I already said as far as an introduction. So I think that's important, you know, because otherwise people are always thinking, who are these people in the room? Like, why is there so much and whatnot? So I think that's important. And going back to that fact, again, is not applicable for everyone, but when you work with a lot of people, you know, follow up obviously is key in making sure that everybody does their job. So Melissa, how do you follow up with everyone as needed?
I call that Tetris. If anybody remembers that game, Tetris game, what's worked for me going back to old school Outlook is flagging items and thinking of color coding. There's a neat tool because at some point I ended up having way too many flagged items. So if the tool isn't working, you got to find a way to make it work. In Outlook, there's this great tool where you can call it categorize, and you can also color code it as well. And you can do that just on emails. And what it does is it separates all of your emails into that categorized item and shows you, okay, is it same thing I do, green, purple, blue, and I know what they all mean. And I'm also quick to let people know, hey, maybe I missed this. Maybe you did follow up, you know, so that it's not coming across of, okay, Melissa's checking on this again, but it's more so, hey, I don't have this flag that's completed. Let me follow up and see if it's done. And that's really received well from my counterparts. And it also helps me with a good format with categorizing. I also time block, like Doris, actually Mondays, but I also do Fridays. So Mondays is typically me looking at the week, kind of seeing, okay, what unopened items from the week prior is still there with my partners. And then Fridays are typically just looking back, what's happened during that week. Did we do everything? Who do I need to connect with? So it is a little bit of a game of Tetris, but the categorized tool is phenomenal. As soon as you're done, you just uncheck it and it disappears from your inbox, and it's off of my head knowing that it's done.
That's great. That's great. Well, I think so. To round this all out, I think this is the perfect time to switch gears to the personal growth and well-being aspect, right? Which is so important, especially these days. So, what does it take for you, Melissa, to be at your personal best?
When I hear that, my first response is balance, right? And I know that's talked about a lot, but for us to every day give our best to other people, we have to give our best to ourselves first. And so for me, that means I need to take time for myself. I need to, in the mornings, make sure whether I get my run in, whether I do yoga, whether I meditate, I just have to find a place for peace, as I call it, one way or the other, so that when I come in and I'm ready to work, I'm ready to work 100%. So balance for me means balance of my body, but also of my mind, so that I can give my best to everybody around me.
So how do you consistently do it though? Because I often hear, so I like working out too and yoga and whatever, and I literally, again, on my calendar, have a little workout reminder. So I make sure that I do it. Like how do you stick with it? As I often hear people sometimes go through waves, right? It's like you have all those good intention. You're like, yeah, this is my new workout program. I'm going to do it like every day or every other day, whatever. And then let's say something happens that week, that day, you know, where there's other obstacles thrown at you and you rather have a glass of wine, you know, which is also good therapy. It just depends. So how do you like make sure that you stick to that plan and you make sure you take care of yourself?
To make it as routine as possible and actually not making it as tough on yourself, right? I think we're a little bit too tough on ourselves. We're kind of to other people, but ourselves, we're just so tough. And before I was like that, where, okay, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And now what I tend to do is say, okay, I give myself monthly goals, like, okay, this month, this is what I'm going to work on, whether it's going to be doing more yoga, doing more runs, weights, whatever it is. And then I just back into that and say, okay, every week, 5 days a week, I'm going to do something. Where if there's a day where that is absolutely not going to happen, I don't bother. I'm like, okay, this is what my body needs. My schedule didn't allow me to do that today. What I don't allow it to do is throw me off my whole schedule. So and yesterday was a great example. Yesterday, I walked the dog, but I don't count that one. I didn't get to do all the things that I wanted to do because work was so crazy. And I said, you know what, that's fine. Today's another day, you know, opposed to taking it as, oh my gosh, I'm the worst person ever. I said I was going to do this and I didn't. So it's still a non-negotiable in my mind, but it's more so a long-term goal of how do I sustain my mental balance consistently? And that will mean some days I will have the glass of wine, and that's okay too. I'm not going to chastise myself for it.
So that's good. You're basically giving yourself occasionally a hall pass as long as the overall goal for that month or that week is sort of accomplished, right?
Right. And what's helped me is, you know, we're so hard on ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I've looked back at things I've written down of what my goals were for the week. And I actually got it done. You know, we're so sometimes busy looking ahead and what we planned. And, oh man, we didn't get to do it. We forget to just look back and see, hey, I'm pretty great. I accomplished a lot, you know? So I try not to be so hard on myself. That's a struggle, but long-term balance is my mission. So I try to give myself hall passes, as you say.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to, you know, you have to have the right level of energy to be able to do whatever you do for a living, you know, best. And so you can consistently, again, deliver. If you're not feeling well mentally, physically, you know, then it's always going to be a struggle and it's going to be reflective, you know, on others. So thanks for sharing that. Well, so at this point, really want to open it up to the group and see if you have any other questions. It's such a, you know, broad topic. So if you have more specific questions around driving results, or maybe where you have a challenge and would like some feedback as far as maybe some techniques or other things on how you could improve that, you know, happy to open it up for that, or any other questions you guys might have.
Don't forget to unmute yourself if you have a question, and please join in.
I would love, Doris, for that. If you could share that book that you were talking about, the virtual prospect.
Yes, what I'm going to do is I was going to, let me grab it and maybe I can find the Amazon link or something and send it that way. That might be the best way. I'll send you that.
Okay.
A quick, easy read, but it's like little cool tips that might make your virtual life a little easier. You know?
Since it's so much virtual.
I know it's all virtual these days.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. How are you seeking out new clients in a virtual world? I know that you had mentioned LinkedIn, but I was just seeing how else you just went through that process.
Yeah, so depending again on what market you're trying to target. Obviously, LinkedIn is an easy way in a sense because you can look that person up, see what other connections they have, and maybe you know one of their connections, and then you can ask for an introduction, which that would be the easiest route, right? If you don't have a connection, then you can still reach out to them via that medium, or there might be a phone number or other email listed so you can contact them. The other part is, again, you know, the South Florida Business Journal. There are other either publications or on the internet where you can write research and look for the contact you're trying to make. So I guess depending, so in my business, it's very selective and specific. So I always try to find other people who are connected to the person I want to meet, right? Versus just cold calling, picking up the phone and emailing. I mean, that's like my last resort. I will do that and I can do that, but it's a lot more work when you have to go down that path, because it requires a lot more outreach until you're going to see some sort of a result, right? The other part is obviously referrals and introduction in general, whether it's from existing clients, that is actually my best route, or what we call a center of influence, or somebody in your community who has a lot of contact or connections to the people that you want to meet. I mean, do you want to be maybe a little bit more specific, what sort of audience or whatever, and then I can maybe think about or give you some feedback on maybe how you want to specifically tackle that group?
Yeah, so I would say for myself, like members, like new members.
Okay, so I would definitely field out what other groups are out there that have synergy with TCI, for example. And we know we're obviously targeting women, but then at the same token, if we're targeting the corporations, you don't know if the HR person or whoever is in that business and makes those decisions manages women and whatnot, right? So again, I would try and find the first more targeted approach is women in business, and so that would be through the internet and other groups that are out there, and then sending out obviously email blasts if we can. In some cases, it's just as simple as sometimes you have to buy lists and things of that nature when you want to really hit a broad market versus a specific individual. That oftentimes comes. I know some of the things that we as a group in TCI have to do is the fine tuning of when somebody searches for us or for a women's group, that it propels TCI sort of to the top, or one of the first few links that come up. I mean, that's always important. And then I think though, with this group, it is a lot of grassroots effort in the sense of, for people who have attended Strategies for Success to tell their friends, because I've never heard anybody say Strategy Success wasn't great, right? So everybody usually is very impressed by the program and happy to have participated. And I think we have to try and utilize that better, and be able to have them bring in their friends, because if one person brings another person and that person brings another person, that's how you sort of make a difference from a grassroots effort, and it's not just mass mailing. So
thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else before we close out?
I know we talked about how to manage out a client that's not a good fit, but is there a point where you want to stop following up with a certain client? Is there a point when you've reached like, I've tried to follow up with this client at least like 3 times and there's been nothing? How do you manage that?
So is it actually a client or more like a prospect you're trying to get?
A prospect.
Okay, yeah. If it's still within the ideal client criteria, right? If that person is still a target, then I think you should never stop following up, right? You just space it out longer, right? It might be 6 months, now it might be once a year, to that extent. And it shouldn't take you then that much more effort, right? You go in strong in the beginning, trying to create something, but there are studies out there that will show you that most business is closed after I don't know how many times of outreach, right? And that the chances get so much more enhanced the more you try and the more contact you actually have. So I would bucket it out in different buckets, like, right, of contact interval. And if you have someone that you've done forever, look, if it's an emailing list or something else that doesn't really cost you much effort to do anyways, I would always keep those people on there, because you never know that they might come and then didn't take a lot of your time. And yeah, so I would never cross the prospect fully off.
I echo those sentiments because people sometimes just are receiving too much at a moment in time, and you're not top of mind for whatever it is you are positioning to them at the time. And I try to always put myself in those shoes, because even I get overwhelmed with the amount of emails, and I will flag something, but it's not a priority, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes somebody will email me again and I go, oh, that's right. I forgot and meant to do that. And so I say, try to never get point, just kind of space out. If they may, just keep dripping on them. One time you drip on them is when they're, okay, now I'm ready to receive this. I have the time, let me jump on that note. So if they don't meet your profile, of course, they told you no, that's different. But I would say don't delete them. I definitely have experiences with prospects where I was driven, took 3 years before long. Now I'm ready. So,
Yeah.
did we freeze?
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was me or it might be me.
No, I had like Melissa was having the it was all broken up on my end too.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought maybe it's the internet.
The message was
Yeah.
keep dripping.
Okay.
Keep dripping.
Got it.
Great,
Thank
great
you.
advice.
Thank you.
Great advice. Anyone else before we close?